In theory, retractable hardtops combine the strengths of fixed-head coupes and soft-top convertibles. You get the look, safety, and security of a closed-body car. If you'd rather have the wind in your hair, then there's no need to fuss with the top. Hit a button and you're seconds from open-air motoring. And it is pretty neat to see everything in action. Whirring motors set everything in motion, and sensors ensure that everything is perfectly aligned. Sounds like bleeding edge stuff. So you might be surprised to learn that the technology was patented by a French dentist nearly 100 years ago. This is a brief history of hardtop convertibles. Georges Paulin was a dentist by trade, but got the idea in 1927 after seeing a neighbor struggle with the canvas top of a convertible. It was a whole ordeal trying to unclip the bulky cover and wrestle it into the boot. He did finally manage to get it down, but Paulin knew his troubles probably weren't through yet. If it rained or got chilly, then the man would have to go through the same trouble while also dealing with inclement weather, and the car would most likely be ruined. There had to be a better way, he thought. He spent the next 4 years working on a solution and, in 1931, was able to file a patent for a retractable metal roof. It was powered by an electric motor and folded back into the rear in one piece. He dubbed his invention Eclipse because the action resembled the sun crossing the face of the sun. He presented the idea to various companies including Citroen, though none of them were interested. French coachbuilder Pourtout caught wind of his invention and wanted to implement his technology into a one-off car. They had a client that requested a unique modification to his Hotchkiss. A frustratingly vague request to be sure, but they felt the Eclipse folding roof fit the bill. This deal ultimately fell through. Paulin and Pourtout would get another crack at it. His father-in-law wanted the top installed on his Peugeot 301. The finished product was so good that a local Peugeot dealer displayed it in his showroom for a bit. One thing led to another, and Peugeot themselves took notice. Paulin and the company made a deal. The Eclipse top will be installed on a 401, and he'd get paid 100 francs for each one sold. It will later be adopted onto the 402 and 601. Pourtout would also license the tech to Lancia, who made the Belgian Eclipse in 1938. They stunned onlookers and shone under the showroom lights, but it was tough to make a case for the cars in the real world. Peugeot claimed the process would be complete in as little as 15 seconds. Actually, it was closer to a full minute. Folding the top just 5 times would completely drain the electric motor. Luckily, the company thought ahead and had a backup in the form of a manual crank. It took the cars a full minute to get up to 60 miles per hour, and the extra weight on the boot made handling unpredictable. Aesthetically, its integration clashed with the rest of the bodywork and resulted in frumpy proportions. The final nail on the coffin was its price. Cars with the top demanded a 40% premium, and even then Peugeot was hardly making any money on them. In total, there were 79 401s, 580 402s, and 21 601s. Peugeot would put their resources into other projects, and Paulin would go on to have a career worthy of its own video. The advantages and drawbacks for these cars would trickle down to future offerings in this segment. Take the Ford Fairlane 500 Skyline, for example. The project started in a design studio as a scale model by Gil Spear. Word of the car spread throughout the company, and Ford quickly greenlit the project in 1953. Ford initially wanted to go with a hydraulic power system, but they went with a setup similar to the Eclipse. The process here would be completely automatic. It would unlatch itself from the windshield and retract into the rear on its own. This level of automation in the mid-1950s resulted in a bit more complexity. Instead of being powered by one motor, the top of the Fairlane would use 7. The motors, switches, and relays were all connected by 610 feet of wire. There was also going to be a version for Lincoln, as the crowning jewel of the Continental line, but this was eventually cancelled. Production began in 1957, and President Dwight D. Eisenhower got the first car off the line. It launched with a starting price of $2,942, or nearly $700 more than the base Fairlane. Like the Eclipse, the Skyliner was a novelty more than anything. The mechanism crippled its cargo space. Passengers had to put their items into a small metal box to avoid damage to the roof or their belongings. This also made the already tedious action of changing a tire even more convenient. The spare tire is stowed away in the boot. To get to it, you have to fold the top up and fish the box out of the trunk. The case for the car weakens further when you consider that Ford made convertibles that were more practical and more enjoyable to drive than the Skyliner. Surprisingly enough, they managed to move more than 20,000 in its first run on the market. But from there it was all downhill. A price increase combined with a recession in 1958 sent sales tumbling to 14,000. It moved to the newly released Galaxy line in 1959 and got a facelift, but even this couldn't stop the bleeding. They only sold about 12,000 in what would be its last year. The car was already an entire generation behind, and judging by the past few years, the company didn't think it would make sense to dump money into such a niche endeavor. There wouldn't be another hardtop convertible on the market for nearly 40 years. The one that broke the dry spell came from Mitsubishi, who offered a convertible variant of the 3000 GT in 1995 and 1996. The system is significantly more complex than the others. It folds nearly in half and could even be controlled from the key fob. The smaller footprint kept Mitsubishi from bringing the rear out. It stacks up pretty well when compared to its coupe counterpart, at least with the top lowered. By far its biggest detriment was the price. In 1995, a base 3000 GT with 222 horsepower and front-wheel drive started at about $32,000, and the range-topping VR4 started at $46,000. The base Spyder started at $62,000. That's $62,000 for a front-wheel drive, 222 horsepower car with more weight tacked on, and the more powerful VR4 started at nearly $70,000. 1996 was the last year of the Spyder, but it was also the first year of another car with more staying power. The Mercedes-Benz Sl K was the first of these cars to be designed with the technology from the outset. It comes down surprisingly quick at about 20 seconds. The scope of this car paired well with the tech. With the 401, Skyliner, and 3000 GT, the company sacrificed the practicality of otherwise rational cars to integrate the tech, which ultimately reduced it to a gimmick. Conversely, people looking at a car like an Sl K aren't intending on it being a daily driver. It doesn't have much to sacrifice. This, combined with the styling and a starting price of around $25,000, helped the Sl K sell over 300,000 units in its 7 years of the market. Mercedes had a hit on their hands, and other companies took note. There was, for a brief moment, a segment of luxury coupes with retractable hardtops. The Lexus Sc 430 was first shown off as a production prototype in 2000, and beat the Cadillac XLR and R230 SL in production, though it probably would have been in Toyota's best interest to leave it in the oven for a little while longer. It's one of the blandest cars of the 2000s with the top down, and it looks even worse with it up. You feel claustrophobic just from looking at it. This was entirely intentional. The roof was actually designed to draw your attention from the wheels. The R230 SL was one of the first cars in their range to sport their new design language. The car has smoother surfacing than the Sl K, and this is especially reflected in the roof. Their previous effort looked alright from most angles, though you could see its true nature if you look at it for a bit. The R230 doesn't give up much visually. The only giveaways are the cut lines. When it folds inward, you can see that the rear window itself is a separate piece. This system was the most refined and intricate on the market for a while. Rounding out the segment was the Cadillac XLR. The roof looks like it was drawn on with a ruler, which just happens to pair well with the car's crisp art and science design language. The trunk goes high in the air as the top extends into place. You can even see the quarter window rotate out. There was a battle between these sub-$70,000 coupes, but an all-out war was brewing down the ladder. The Peugeot released a 206 Cross Cabriolet in 2001, and it's one of the first cars that truly brought the technology down to the mainstream. The car looks odd enough with the top down. The way the windshield rolls and tapers to a point makes it look squished. It does again any better with the top up. The 206 is a compact car, so the designers have to make the roofline smaller to fit into the trunk. This results in awkward proportions that would be prevalent in this class of cars. Soon enough, coupe cabriolets based on compact cars sprang up everywhere. Some models, like the Ford Focus CC, were a visual downgrade from their regular versions, while others, like the Opel Astra twin top, seamlessly integrated the technology into their designs. The Astra's roof is actually split up into 3 sections. It's the only car in the segment that used a system like this. The more complex 3-piece setup saw more use in luxury cars. The BMW 3 Series adopted a system in 2007. The smaller components allow for a trunk that isn't much smaller than the coupes. Infiniti used a similar system for the G. Toyota just couldn't seem to get it on their second try. The roof on the Lexus ISC isn't as cleanly integrated as its competitors. The rear overhangs are on the larger side, and the trunk is higher than the rest of the body. This makes the rear wheel appear smaller than it actually is, and contributes to the same close-in feeling that the SC 430 had. Americans didn't have as large a selection as their friends across the Atlantic. In addition to those luxury coupes and compact executives, buyers can also choose from cars like the Chrysler Sebring. Why does this even exist? Well, they didn't care, neither should you. There was also the Pontiac G6, which was so ugly that it killed the entire segment and sent the country into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Demand for convertibles as a whole declined sharply after the recession, and the comparatively smaller hardtop market contracted significantly. The coupe cabriolet class completely evaporated, and dedicated models like the Volvo C70 went away. Companies couldn't justify setting the money aside to develop these cars, though there have been signs of life in recent years. The few hardtop convertibles still on sale use smaller panels than in years past. This allows for a fluid roofline that mirrors a fixed-head coupe. The McLaren 570S Spider, for example, uses two panels that discreetly fold under the deck lid. With the top up, it looks just like the coupe. Visually, the only thing that separates the coupe from the Spider are the cuts in the roof. It doesn't sweep back as far, but the resemblance between the two is quite striking. There aren't as many all-out convertibles either. The BMW 4 Series is still out there, but even its competitors have gone back to using soft tops. Many of them are more like targa tops. This is absolutely necessary for the Mazda MX-5 RF. The fastback profile is possible because the foldable section only makes up a small portion of the top. The MX-5 RF is one of the only affordable hardtop convertibles currently being produced, and it's unlikely that we'll see the amount of convertibles on the market that we've seen years before. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your suggestions for videos, so if you have any, then drop them in the comments. If you like automotive history, culture, or cars in general, then like and subscribe so you won't miss any future videos.